good. That's a positive update. It's something I didn't expect. So I've got that for you. I'll show you that. And Bill C-26, more censorship. And I hadn't heard one word about this at all. It had flown under the radar. I hadn't heard anything. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody on Twitter's talking about it. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that I can miss. And I've said that before, right? I do my best, but there are things that I miss for sure. And Noel brought it up yesterday during the kitchen table talk. And I said, I'm going to have to look into this. And I've looked into it a little bit, and really not nearly as much as I need to, because there's still a lot of other stuff going on too. But I'm going to pick up this story C-26 and watch it unfold, because it seems very concerning. We'll start there today. And right after that, we're going to be talking about the Liberals, and is there any chance that they're going to pause this carbon tax increase that's happening in a month, April 1st? And they're already saying, nope, no chance. Don't even ask. Don't even ask. We're preemptively telling you, no way. We're not doing anything. No more carbon tax cutouts. Not for you, not for anybody, not for any Canadians. We dislike them unless they're new Canadians, right? That's just the Liberals. That's their base. That's their target demographic. It's wild. There's lots to get to. Let's get to it first. We have to start at what is Bill C-26. And Bill C-26 is a very concerning new internet censorship bill. Heather says, red alert after the failed attempt to table a vote on further inquiry into the EMA. Bill C-26 will work continued. More censorship and tyranny is imminent. And she tags Mark Friesen and some other people. And here is just a minute. You can get to the whole stream here. But here's just a minute of this. This is a constitutional... This person is opposed to Bill C-26, and she explains why. Here we go.
Please. Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm here, of course, to address Bill C-26. This is a bill that grants the government sweeping new powers, and we have concerns that there is no accompanying regime of checks and balances to safeguard rights. As a legal charity dedicated to defending fundamental freedoms, I'd like to speak to some of these points. As drafted, the bill threatens to undermine our privacy rights, as well as the principles of accountability and due process, which form the bedrock of our democracy. The powers proposed by the bill risk impacts on the charter-protected rights of privacy, right against unreasonable search and seizure, freedom of expression, and equality. And of course, we understand that cybersecurity is a huge imperative. We do not believe or accept that cybersecurity ought to come at the cost of civil liberties. The proposals that the CCF is pleased to sign on to, along with other civil liberties groups, align with other international approaches, such as those taken by our partners in the UK and Australia, both of which place a far greater emphasis on proportionality, accountability, and privacy rights. The issues raised by this bill apply to Canadians in our everyday lives. For example, under the bill, if someone's device or smart appliance were hacked and used to target a government website, the federal government could order their telecom service to be shut off in an order that could be kept secret from the public, and the affected person or business would never even know that it was the government that ordered their service disconnected. The bill also does not provide a mechanism for restoring service to individuals or businesses.
So when you get blocked by the city of Guelph, they have a whole policy that basically says you have to surrender all of your freedom of speech, all of your civil liberties in order for you to get unblocked. You have to agree to their terms of service. And that agreement includes you can be censored, they can remove your comments, they can do all sorts of things like that. And I said, well, I'm not going to agree to that. I don't agree to these terms. You don't have the right to demand that of me. You exist because I pay taxes. That's it. And you should unblock me. And they refused to unblock me until I agreed to their terms of service. And so they're going to try and make even access to the internet like that. And it's not like you're in a court of law where they say the sentence is 6 months, or, the sentence is 3 months, or suspended sentence, or whatever it is. And, some people may agree or disagree. They can administer a sentence, remove you from the internet, just willy-nilly. And I mean, when they have social credit tied to central bank digital currency, your money's no good here. No, it really isn't any good here because your social credit's not high enough. So sorry, you can't buy internet access. So you see what's going on? They're trying to censor it from every angle, every possible angle, right? And they're getting there, and they're doing it through changes to the law that ignore, as you just heard, our constitutional rights, our basic rights, and it violates the agreement between the government and the governed, or what we thought was the agreement between the government and the governed. Oh, goodness me. Okay, there's lots to get to with regards to money, and I think that it's very interesting because it's been established, I think pretty well been established, that the carbon tax is inflationary. And because it's inflationary, it's adding points to inflation. It's making things cost more, and every time it goes up, it makes things cost even more. And that's bad if you're trying to make things not cost more, which is fighting inflation. So instead of actually fighting inflation, Justin Trudeau says, we're fighting inflation, but then raises the carbon tax, which is an inflationary tax. So they're not fighting inflation, they're adding to inflation, they're pouring fire on the inflation, right? They're saying, they're pouring gasoline on the fire of inflation. And so Andrew Scheer's trying to point this out and make political hay about this. CTV question period from yesterday at before noon was asking, will the federal government consider any future pauses or exemptions to the federal carbon price amid still high inflation? Steve McKinnon gives a definitive no. So then Scheer says, Trudeau isn't worth the cost and he doesn't care how much pain he causes. He's pathologically obsessed with his carbon tax. Even though it drives up food prices, it drives up inflation, it isn't fair, and it doesn't lower emissions, acts the tax with Pierre Poilievre. Now, they're always campaigning, and I've got to give it to them. They're on message, and that's what you need to do in a political party. Everybody aligned, pushing the same message, clear, concise, well-made arguments that push the message, right? And that's what they're doing. So I can't fault them for it. They're following that playbook. CTV News is reporting, Feds rule out carbon price pause despite inflation. Yeah. So, they've ruled it out, have they? Great. Here's the article. It says, the federal government is ruling out any future pauses or exemptions to the carbon price despite still high inflation numbers contributing to the cost of living, according to Government House leader Stephen McKinnon. On Tuesday, the federal government announced a rebrand of its highly controversial carbon pricing program, changing the name of quarterly rebates from the Climate Action Incentive Payment to the Canada Carbon Rebate. There are no changes to how the federal fuel pricing system and corresponding rebate will actually work, but the Liberals argue the new name will make the program easier for people to understand. Nope. The rebranding announcement came ahead of a planned April 1st increase to the carbon price. And then it goes through their justification for not reducing or not stopping the implementation of the new tax or the increase in the tax. So they're not interested in hearing any sane or rational arguments. They're ideologically committed to raising this tax. Unfortunate for Canadians, I think. Holly Doan is reporting, auditors uncover irregularities in spending by Canada's embassy in Dakar, Senegal. Audit period coincided with the Prime Minister's Senegalese tour in a failed bid to win a seat on UN Security Council. I wonder what the irregularities are. I wonder what was being paid for, right? And for who? Interesting stuff. And I'm not surprised. There's irregularities everywhere. Like everywhere you look in the Canadian government these days. It doesn't matter. And it doesn't even really matter if it's federal or provincial or municipal. Everywhere you look, it seems like there's incorrect or insiders getting preferential treatment, or people who sit on boards getting their companies to have $200,000, as part of some kind of deal where they provide some kind of service or something like that, but they're sitting on these boards and they work for the government and so on. So it's weird and it's everywhere. And that doesn't mean it's okay. That just means it's everywhere. And it seems like Canadians don't have any mechanism to hold any of these people accountable for any of the economic malfeasance, right? I mean, even just like the amount of alcohol being consumed on embarrassing plane rides for Trudeau since 2015 to now, right? Like no accountability for any of that, although reports on it have stopped miraculously, right, in recent years. Anyway, Tracy Wilson is highlighting this post. Liberal Party says, putting people first, that's how we'll keep growing an economy that works for all Canadians, right? The economy is not numbers, the economy is people. That quote is attributed to Justin Trudeau. The economy is definitely numbers. The economy is absolutely numbers, 100% numbers. Just it's numbers. Tracy Wilson says, if you're ever wondering how in 8 short years a party in power was able to absolutely decimate the middle class, send your grandkids into eternal debt and run up more national debt than every prime minister in history combined. This is how. They don't think about numbers. No. Doesn't the budget balance itself, right? Christia Freeland, oh goodness. If you believe the budget balances itself, and then you put a reporter in charge of the finances of the country, I mean, that's putting a lot of faith in the budget balancing itself, isn't it? Like, goodness. Pierre Poilievre says after, 8 years, Trudeau doubled the rents. Common sense conservatives will build the homes. Actually, it just says common sense conservatives build the homes. I don't know what that means. I wish he'd use regular English instead of whatever that is. It's interesting and notable to me, and it stands out to me that Pierre Poilievre has not touched immigration at all. And it seems like he said we should tie immigration to the number of houses that we can build. But if you're honest, we need a 5 to 10 year pause on immigration to house all the people who are already here and showing up illegally, right? And so it seems to me strange that, well, it's not strange because Poilievre is saying we're going to build our way out of this. And that's not possible. And I think I've illustrated that a bunch of times with different examples, so I'm not going to go through it. But it is absolutely not possible to double our output of homes in a year. It just isn't possible. And even if you say we're going to import people to hire them to build our homes, I think less than 3% of the people immigrating to Canada are working construction jobs. So that's not a realistic answer either. A much more realistic answer would be to drop immigration to the point where the pressure on the housing system, supply and demand, is not nearly where it's at now, to let everybody catch up. What does that even mean, catch up? I mean, people are still catching up from the first bubble in 2008, right? Like, people are still catching up. We're not caught up. And case in point, here's the food professor to illustrate how people are not caught up. Philip is saying, a trip to the grocery store doesn't feel like shopping anymore, but like being placed under surveillance, the food professor says. And the food professor is responding to this. Store theft at grocery stores is such an issue now that grocers are redesigning stores completely and not just checkouts. Expect more smaller stores. So, yeah, I mean, it's the warehouse style, big grocer, Costco kind of look. It seems like it's on the way out, and the more artisanal small grocers on the way in. But with that is going to come, they're going to be checking IDs at the entryway like they wanted to do at the LCBO, right? There's food in here. Are you kidding me? This is the most valuable thing we've got. Just watch, man. It seems like, and if you don't want to eat crickets, well, sorry. Ian is sharing this. Now, I am not a money guy, but money people seem to be talking about how concerning things are with fiat currencies, how the price of gold continues to increase, and how it seems like big accounts are selling their stocks. People like politicians and billionaires are selling their stocks. And this guy with the epic mustache and the really long hair, like, look at this. I couldn't grow hair like this if I dedicated a decade of my life to growing hair like that. If I wanted to grow hair like that, I would look silly for 10 years trying to do it. Everybody would be like, dude, just stop. Okay, he's got epic hair. Here we go.
Politicians and billionaires have started selling off all their stock.
Senator Tuberville just dumped a huge amount of his portfolio this month, and I mean huge. Out of the 61 trades he made over the last month, 59 of them were sales. Tuberville isn't just your regular congressman. When it comes to trading, he has one of the best records in Congress, right next to Nancy Pelosi. Maybe one of the reasons behind this performance is the crazy amount of Senate committees that he's on.
If you somehow don't know who Quiver Quantitative is, they track the politicians' trades. They have a website. They're one of the best resources you can go to if you want to know what's going on in the stock market and the world. And he points out how Tommy Tuberville sits on a ton of congressional committees that give him insight into what's happening with commodities, rural development, food and nutrition, military action. You can go to quiverquantitative.com and look for Tommy Tuberville, and it'll show you all the data on all of his different trades across the years, whether they're buys or sells, what industries they're in, and you can see what we're talking about here. In February, he sold off huge amounts of stock in every single industry. Just this February, Jeff Bezos has also sold another $2 billion of Amazon stock, and he's up to $6 billion in sales. Mark Zuckerberg is doing the same thing. This is where the SPY is currently at. This is an index that tracks the top 500 and so companies in the market. This was the year 2000, and this was the year 2008, those bubbles. But economists want you to believe that this is not a bubble, that this was the crash and we're recovering and it's all good. Except all the insiders, the richest people in the world, the politicians, for some reason think that this is a really good time to sell all of their assets. We also recently discussed how Bloomberg did a study where they showed that media mentionings of soft landings is actually a reverse indicator for soft landings. The yellow is where we've had major recessions, and news coverage of the possibilities of soft landings spikes before major collapses. And
so, right, so like if you can't see what is being illustrated on the screen here, the gray illustrates news mentions of soft landing. Do you remember? I remember Chrystia Freeland saying, we're going to have a very soft landing. Sorry, she sniffs into the microphone a lot. I thought I'd mimic that. But she was saying that a whole bunch. And it was more like 4 or 5 months ago, like almost even a year ago, if memory serves, like right around the last budget, right? Like she was talking about soft landing, soft landing, soft landing, and then kind of nothing happened. And now I guess media mentions of soft landings have gone off the charts if you compare to the 2000s and 2010s. And well, this is the 2008 recession here before 2010. So, but how much earlier were these soft landing reports, right? This one's pretty close to the collapse. This one's a little bit further back. So, and we're in the midst of the soft landing reports, I guess. Oh, that's 23. So, it's pretty interesting stuff. Anyway, the rest of the video is interesting too. And I'm not a money guy, but it seems like things are happening. It seems like things outside of the ordinary are happening. And I don't know what that means. And Bitcoin's very expensive right now, right? Bitcoin was like $35,000 a coin. Now it's $50,000 a coin. And I don't know if it's on more of a tear. I thought I saw 50,000 and I saw 52. I don't know if it's more than that now. So that's pretty expensive too. So very interesting things going on there. Speaking of money, cost of living, and all the rest of it, back to Canada. In Tofino, they're charging seniors to walk on the beach. So you can buy your beach walking tickets if you want. Freedom Girl says this is BS, charging seniors $12 to walk, but children are free. This is disgusting. Why are we charging anybody to go for a walk? And apparently, if you say you're a local, you can avoid it. So there you go. I live here. Get out of here. When I was a kid, I went to a high school, and one of the rural communities was Rockwood. And in Rockwood is the Rockwood Conservation Area. And during the time of me being in high school, so old enough to go out and find a bush to party in, they started trying to stop people from Rockwood using the conservation area without going through the gate, right? And so they were trying to block it off, and they were trying to say you're not allowed to do that. And so it was... I remember fights like this. People were very resistant at first, and people were grandfathered in for a very long time, to the degree where most people were just like, oh yeah, they said that, but they didn't mean it. And then now I think that it's been pretty normalized, and so many people have moved there that like nobody questions it now, that you go through the gate. Like you don't just walk in and use it a la carte whenever you want. As a community member, you're just like a regular community member. You go to the gate. So it's weird how things take a long time to kind of take root, but once they do, I mean, things change, right? It's weird. And I'm not advocating for this. I think it's kind of, it's cheap, right? Like how many billions are we printing to send to Ukraine? And we have to nickel and dime seniors in Canada to walk on a trail? Come on, guys, like cheapers creepers. I don't agree with it. I think we live in Canada, right? We should get access for free. We pay taxes to maintain those things. Anyway, regardless, it's interesting how time changes things and time changes mentality. Like when I was a kid, I was like, yeah, whatever. And we'd get in there and people, and nobody would give us a hard time, right? I don't think anybody cared. And now I think you could probably get in there and I don't think anybody would care, but nobody thinks to do it. That's just the difference, right? Ashley St. Clair, let's move on. Talking about invasions. Let's talk about, the incentive for this. If there wasn't money to be made, nobody would be opening hotels for migrants. Nobody would be opening hotels for people who don't live here, because if nobody was making money, then they wouldn't do this, right? You wouldn't wake up one day and think to yourself, I've got that nice New York hotel. I think I'll destroy it with making it into a shelter. They're making cash money, right? Here's an investigative reporter. I showed him yesterday. He was talking with people in Spanish about living in the hotel and so on and so forth, and asking how much money they paid and do they work and all the rest. Here he is trying to illustrate how much money hotels are making off of the migrant crisis. He says it's in the millions. Here we go.
Here is the Row Hotel.
This is one of the 5 hotels that has been transformed into a shelter.
So we're going to walk in there and see what kind of operation they're running inside. This is a really nice hotel. How's it going?
How can I help you with?
Oh yeah, we were just checking out the hotel.
Oh, the hotel is closed, I'm sorry.
It's closed, but there's a ton of people in here right now.
Because it's a shelter now.
Oh, you guys,
No, hotel.
it's shelter for the migrants coming in?
Yeah, it's no longer open to the public. It's closed to the public.
How many floors is it?
30.
30 floors. This thing is,
Yeah.
you guys aren't allowed to talk about it? Why is it like such a big secret, do you think?
I don't know. We just follow orders.
When hotels such as the Row Hotel close until further notice, they sign a contract with an outside source saying that they will pay the rent in order for them to house the migrants. And the hotels love it because it is guaranteed money every single night. And at a rate of $200 per night at the Row Hotel, and with 1,331 rooms, that is $260,000 a day, $1.8 million a week, and $7.2 million a month. And all that money is guaranteed.
So why are they doing it? Why do you think they're doing it? It's cash money, guaranteed income paid for by suckers like us, right? I mean, American suckers like us, but just like us, right? I think they even speak English down there. John says the invasion is now on two fronts. They're highlighting the New York Post. Illegals crossing the Canadian border into the U.S. We are being invaded from the north and the south. Only 6 states have a population of 12 plus million, which is how many illegals will cross the border under Biden. So it's a similar thing happening in Canada. We import full cities the size of Winnipeg and nobody bats an eye. And Justin Trudeau says we have to double down on making sure Canadians are enthusiastic about immigration. Wow. Right? True North is reporting Trudeau admits Mexican cartels are taking advantage of Canada's asylum system. Prime Minister Trudeau has acknowledged the troubling reality that Mexican cartels are exploiting Canada's refugee and asylum system. Across the country, particularly Ontario, we've seen a rise in asylum seekers, even as we managed to close Roxham Road by negotiating the Safe Third Country Agreement. The United States, we're seeing more people arrive through airports. Yeah, they've just changed tactics. We're in conversations with Mexico about making sure that the number of asylum seekers, some of them supported by organized crime in Mexico, to come up to Canada are reduced. Sure. Despite this revelation, Trudeau's government remains steadfast in its controversial decision to waive visa requirements for Mexican citizens, a move that critics argue has exacerbated the issue. Do you think this is something that Poilievre will, like a quick, easy fix that he'll use to stop, I don't know, car thief gangs or something to that effect? Because aren't a lot of cars stolen and then trafficked down to Mexico, right? Or down to South America? As reported by True North in 22, the Trudeau government is standing by its decision to no longer require a visa for Mexican citizens as major cartels have come to abuse the system and dominate the fentanyl trafficking trade. An investigation by Wall Street Journal detailed how Mexico's Sinaloa and Jalisco new generation cartels have overtaken traditional drug suppliers such as China in smuggling fentanyl across North America. So it's interesting because they're not willing to act, even though they're the ones who opened that avenue. They made visas not necessary for Mexicans coming to Canada, and so caused the problem through that, or helped cause the problem through that. And now they're exploiting the loophole, they being drug traffickers and people who are exploiting the loophole in Mexico. It doesn't even have to be Mexicans to exploit the Mexican loophole. They just have to be in Mexico, right? And they're exploiting that loophole to continue to flood the country with drugs. So yay, more drugs to kill people and overdoses. Good thing the government's giving out free drugs too. Kevin says this is insanity. Breaking 911's reporting 12-year-old Boston boy thought he had baseball practice this weekend. He didn't, because illegal aliens had taken over his community center. And we're not talking about, like, you know, the outer space kind of aliens.
It's been 2 weeks since the Melnea Cache Recreational Community Center in Roxbury was converted into an emergency shelter for migrant families. Hundreds of beds now cover the indoor track and soccer fields, where neighborhood children like 12-year-old Jeremiah Rodriguez thought he had baseball practice this weekend.
We usually practice.
And what happened when you went here today?
They were closed.
Closed to the public, as dozens of families are now living in the shelter, who were at one point sleeping in Logan Airport, as the state shelter system is stretched to the limit.
Overall, it has been putting some pressure on the capacity of our system.
It's okay to help, but I don't think that's the place to do it, because kids
and family go enjoy.
As a community, voicing our opinion and our concerns for the youth center and the elderly programs going down there, and it just seemed like our voices weren't heard.
In an effort to mobilize the community, activists
Things are just getting started. Like these people don't understand. This is like just the first or second wave. Like it's going to get worse. It's not going to get better. And we're paying for it. These people are paying for it. They're paying for it as well with not being able to use their facilities. We have 10 cities in Guelph. 10 cities, multiple 10 cities. Like there's one tent city downtown and then another tent city in multiple other locations that are supposed to be off to the side and not an eyesore, not in the well-traveled areas of Guelph. But I think that that's still a poor solution. These people who live there are being kind of shuffled off and given free land, given the ability to stake kind of a land claim there. At some point, that has value. And then at another point, there's going to be competition. What happens when somebody leaves their tent? The next person who gets there with a tent gets the spot. Like the whole thing is kind of hinky, right? There's unintended consequences being created by people trying to virtue signal and fundamentally, I think probably make money, right? Because that's the motivation. Here's Eric, and he says, Canadians are not woke. This doesn't all have to do with housing and invasions and things like that. This is just what people think about it in UK and the USA and Canada. And so Eric's going through this data, and as well, all of these kind of polls can be manipulated, but at the same time, these polls are coming back similar, so that's notable. Eric says, Canadians are not woke, but have the same views on culture war issues as Americans and Brits. This is the main finding in the new Milley report. So this is the link to the report if you're interested, MLI report. Canadians' attitudes average within 0.3% of British attitudes across 30 items and 1% of American attitudes across 13 items, despite surveys conducted 1 to 2 years apart with different samples and firms. That's interesting. Like Americans, Brits, of those with an opinion, around 8 in 10 Canadians say political correctness has gone too far. 61% say they can't express political views because others may be offended. 55% feel less free to express views on immigration than 5 years ago. Canadians leaned 70 to 30 against the idea that Canada is a racist country and, by a similar margin, don't want kids taught this. Britons are 11 points more likely than Canadians to say that their country is racist. That's surprising. Americans, 25% more likely. Really? That's surprising, because I thought that Canadians were well down this road, and it seems that we're not as far down as England or America, and that's very scary. Eric continues, Canadians lean strongly against the trans activist position despite the gender-affirming stance of Canadian institutions and legacy media. Even when it comes to displaying pronouns, more Canadians oppose this than approve of it. So there you go. Statues of Sir John A. Macdonald, the country's father of Confederation, have been attacked or removed almost everywhere, yet Canadians by a 2-to-1 margin oppose removing him, and by a 91-to-9 ratio they oppose activists who topple statues. When Canadians are shown graphics that cut through complexity, they become more anti-woke. Those who only read a text description of Kayla Lemieux being allowed to teach with a size 9 prosthetic breast opposed this 43-38, but those who saw the picture opposed Kayla's 75-11. Yep. Francophone Canadians are viewed as less woke than Anglophones, but the differences are modest. Okay, we'll move on, but you get the picture. It seems that regardless of the media's portrayal of what Canadians think, what Canadians actually think is far more sane than the news portrayal of us, of our opinions anyway. Very strange. Okay, let's talk about Lobster-gate. Ryan O'Connor is noticing Lawrence Macaulay, and Lawrence Macaulay put this tweet out. He says, I touched down in Malaysia, and he's got this photo here, and he's got a big lobster there, and he's mowing down. He's very happy about this. Touchdown in Malaysia. I'm looking forward to a productive week of meeting with officials, industry leaders, and partners from Canada and the Indo-Pacific to promote our world-class products like the lobster I enjoyed for lunch in Kuala Lumpur. So there you go. It's supposed to be kind of a innocuous tweet. You know, I'm out here trading for Canada and blah, 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 blah. Look at this great Canadian product I'm eating over in Kuala Lumpur. And Ryan O'Connor says, while Canadians queue at food banks, this Liberal minister spewed carbon traveling halfway around the world to dine at Burger and Lobster in Kuala Lumpur, where he brags about feasting on a $62 lobster for lunch, as many Canadians stretch out a $62 grocery bill for a week. Was the minister full after his feast, or did he also order the $38 lobster roll as a side? Very expensive. And so they go through. People didn't like this, and Ryan O'Connor goes through a whole thread on how Kuala Lumpur is some kind of foodie capital of the world, and he could have gotten all sorts of cheap things to eat and so on and so forth. Whatever. Melissa Lantzman, and like, not whatever I care as much. It seems out of touch and it seems elitist to do this, right? But saying he could have got cheap food, like, okay, I could have gone to the mall too. You know what I mean? I could have gone to the mall food court, I guess, but I didn't. I went to the sit-down restaurant, and sure, there's going to be a huge price difference. So I don't know if that holds water. But anyway, there's a whole big thread about why he's mad about it. Melissa Lantzman's mad about it too. She says, always with the lobster with these guys, Canadians are visiting food banks in record numbers, and people are having to choose between filling up their car, heating their home, and feeding their family. Minister eating lobster in the Malaysian sun on your dime, and post about it to make sure you see how tone deaf he is. So elitist, maybe more than tone deaf, elitist. Senator Denise Batters is responding as well. Trudeau's ag minister is more concerned about his lobster lunch in Malaysia than the millions of dollars Canadian farmers are paying in carbon tax, because the Trudeau government won't allow ungutted version of Bill C-234 to pass. So yeah, they'll get the internet censorship bill C-26 passed, but C-234 to exempt farmers from the carbon tax, no way, because those kulaks, farmers need to be punished, right? And here's another response. Kirk says, record food bank usage thanks to your party's policies, while people who are voting Canadians into poverty are dining on lobster billed to taxpayers. Imagine how ignorant you have to be to post it. Yep, I think that's pretty accurate. You got to be pretty elitist. You got to think that, man, everybody's going to love this. Everybody likes lobster, especially when you're in Malaysia, right? I've never been to Malaysia to have. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for watching. This is just a short version of a longer show. If you'd like to get the whole show, you can go over to CanadaPoly.com and sign up for a subscription. Just look in the drop-down tab for Shop and Donate and look for subscriptions, and you'll get immediate access to the full show. Love to see you. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a wonderful, wonderful